Soldiers, advance! Forward, no retreat!
The Roman Empire was not built in a single day. It was not built only by great generals or powerful emperors. It was built step by step, mile after mile, by ordinary men carrying heavy packs under the hot sun and cold rain. These men were called legionaries. They marched across mountains, deserts, forests, and rivers. Their boots crushed dust in Spain, snow in Germany, sand in North Africa, and mud in Britain. The strength of Rome was not only in its swords, it was in its marching. A Roman legion was one of the most powerful military units in ancient history. At full strength, a legion had about 5,000 to 6,000 men. These men were divided into smaller groups called cohorts, and each cohort was divided into centuries led by centurions. The centurion was not just an officer. He was a symbol of discipline. He carried a staff and could punish soldiers who broke rules. In the Roman army, discipline was everything. Joining a legion was not easy. A recruit had to be physically strong and healthy. He had to be a Roman citizen during most of the empire's history. Once accepted, his life changed completely. He left behind his family, his village, and often his old identity. From that day forward, he belonged to Rome. Training was brutal. New soldiers learned to march long distances. While carrying heavy equipment, they trained with wooden swords heavier than real ones so that battle weapons would feel lighter. They practiced throwing the pilum and fighting with the gladius. They repeated formations again and again until movement became automatic. But more important than fighting was marching. A Roman army could only conquer lands if it could reach them. That meant endless walking. A fully equipped legionary carried around 30 to 45 kilograms of gear. This included weapons, armor, tools, cooking equipment, food rations, and personal items. Roman soldiers were sometimes called Marius mules, named after the general Gaius Marius, because they carried so much weight, like pack animals. Their armor could rub against their skin, causing wounds. Their sandals, called caligae, had thick soles with iron studs, but they did not always protect against sharp rocks or freezing ground. A normal march could cover 20 to 30 kilometers in a day. If speed was important, they could march even farther. And they did this not once, but day after day. There were no comfortable beds waiting at night. When the legion stopped, the work continued. At the end of each day's march, soldiers built a fortified camp. This was not optional. Even if they were tired, hungry, or injured, they had to dig ditches and build walls using wooden stakes they carried with them. Every camp followed a strict layout. Tents were placed in exact positions. Roads were measured carefully. The commander's tent stood at the center. This organization allowed the army to react quickly if attacked at night. The building of camps was one of the secrets of Roman success. Other armies might sleep in open fields. Roman soldiers slept behind defenses. This made them safer and more confident. But it also meant more work. Imagine marching all day under the sun, then digging in hard ground before eating. That was normal life for a legionary. Food was simple. Soldiers ate wheat, which they ground into flour themselves. They baked bread or made porridge. Sometimes they had meat, cheese, olives, or wine, but supplies could run low. During long campaigns, hunger was common. Soldiers sometimes had to live off the land, taking food from local villages. This created fear among civilians, and sometimes anger. Weather made everything harder. In Britain, rain turned roads into mud. In the eastern deserts, heat burned skin and dried throats. In the mountains of Gaul or the Alps, cold winds froze fingers. Yet marching did not stop. Orders were orders. The Roman army believed that strict routine created strength. Soldiers woke at dawn. They marched in formation. They kept silent, unless ordered to speak. Music from horns or drums signaled commands. Every movement was controlled. If one man broke formation, he could weaken the entire unit. So discipline was enforced with fear. Punishments were harsh. A soldier who disobeyed orders could be beaten or even executed. The worst punishment was decimation. If a unit showed cowardice or rebellion, 1 out of every 10 men was chosen by lottery and killed by his own comrades. This rare but terrifying punishment kept fear alive in the ranks. But fear was not the only force holding the legion together. There was also brotherhood, Soldiers lived, marched, ate, and fought together for years. They shared pain and danger. They trusted the man beside them to hold his shield steady. Over time, this created deep loyalty. A legionary might fear his centurion, but he would protect his fellow soldier. Marching was not only physical, it was mental. Imagine knowing that at the end of the march, a battle might wait. Every step could bring you closer to death. The sound of boots hitting the ground became like a drumbeat of destiny. Some soldiers felt pride, others felt fear, most felt but the Roman standard, carried at the front of each legion, was sacred. It showed the eagle symbol of Rome. Losing the standard in battle was a terrible shame. Soldiers would risk their lives to protect it. As they marched, they followed that symbol. It reminded them who they were and why they endured such hardship. Campaigns could last years. Some soldiers spent most of their adult lives marching across foreign lands. When they finally retired, usually after about 20 to 25 years of service, they were often given land as a reward. Many settled far from their birthplace, in provinces they had once conquered. In this way, marching soldiers helped spread Roman culture across the empire. The brutal reality of marching in a Roman legion was not glamorous. It was sweat, blisters, hunger, exhaustion, and fear. But it was also discipline, unity, and purpose. Rome's enemies often underestimated this strength. They saw tired men carrying heavy packs. They did not see the machine those men formed together. By the time a Roman legion reached the battlefield, it was already hardened by the journey. The march itself was a test. Only the strong remained. Only the disciplined survived. And this is why Rome conquered so much of the ancient world. Training, discipline, daily routine, punishment, Roman camp life, centurion authority, equipment, weight, marching formation, food rations, fear of failure, brotherhood, battlefield drills, emotional pressure, loyalty to Rome, survival instinct. Now continuing the script in smooth flow, without headings, in easy English. When a new recruit finished his first long march, he did not get time to rest. Many people think marching was the hardest part of a Roman soldier's life, but in truth, marching was only the beginning. What came next was even more brutal. The Roman army believed that a soldier who was not busy would become weak, so every hour of the day was filled with hard work. At sunrise, the sound of a horn would wake the camp. The soldier had to stand up immediately. There was no slow rising, no stretching, no comfort. He slept on hard ground, often with only a thin blanket. In winter, the cold wind cut through his clothes. In summer, sweat covered his body even before the sun rose fully. After walking, he cleaned his armor and weapons. His sword, called the gladius, had to shine. His shield, the scutum, had to be strong and without cracks. If rust was found on a blade, punishment followed. Roman officers believed that a dirty weapon meant a lazy mind. Training began early. Soldiers practiced fighting not against other men, but against wooden posts placed in the ground. These posts were called practice stakes. The soldier attacked the post again and again, striking with full strength. The wooden sword used for training was heavier than the real one. The shield was also heavier. This was done on purpose. When the real battle came, the lighter weapons would feel easier to handle. They practiced stabbing more than slashing. Roman commanders believed stabbing killed faster. A stab to the stomach or chest ended a fight quickly. A slash might only wound and give the enemy time to strike back. So they trained their arms to move forward again and again, like a machine. But fighting drills were only one part. The Roman soldier also trained to build. He learned to dig ditches quickly. He learned to build walls, using earth and wood. Every evening, when the army stopped marching, they did not simply rest. They built a camp. A real fort, with walls and gates. Even if they stayed only one night, the camp had to be strong. Digging a trench after marching 20 miles was painful. Hands developed blisters. Shoulders burned. But if someone slowed down, the centurion noticed. The centurion was a mid-level officer, but he held great power. He carried a stick made of vine wood. With it, he could beat soldiers who disobeyed orders. Discipline in the Roman army was harsh. If a soldier abandoned his post during guard duty, he could be beaten severely. If a unit showed cowardice in battle, something even worse could happen. There was a punishment called decimation. In this cruel act, every 10th man in the unit was chosen by lot and killed by his own fellow soldiers. This created fear, stronger than any enemy weapon. Because of this fear, loyalty grew in strange ways. Soldiers feared punishment, but they also trusted the man standing next to them. In battle, survival depended on unity. A Roman legion fought as one body. Each shield touched the next. Each man protected the other. The equipment a soldier carried made every step heavy. His armor could weigh over 20 kilograms. Add to this his shield, weapons, tools, food, cooking gear, and personal items. Altogether, he carried around 40 kilograms. Modern soldiers call heavy loads hard, but Roman soldiers carried this weight for years. Their food was simple. Wheat was the main ration. Soldiers received grain and had to grind it themselves into flour. Then they baked bread. Sometimes they ate porridge instead. Meat was rare, but possible when animals were available. Cheese, olives, and vinegar mixed with water were common. This sour drink, called posca, was safer than plain water. Hunger was always close. If supply lines failed, rations were reduced. In foreign lands, soldiers depended on what they could find. Sometimes this meant taking food from local villages. War was not kind to civilians. Despite the hardness, some men chose to stay in the army for many years. Why? Because after about 25 years of service, a soldier received rewards. He could get land or money. For poor men, this was a path to a better life. The Roman army offered citizenship to some non-Romans after service. This was a powerful promise. But reaching that reward was not easy. Many died before completing their service. Battles were bloody. Disease spread quickly in crowded camps. Infections from small wounds could kill. There were no modern medicines. A simple fever could take a strong man's life. Emotional pressure also crushed the soldiers. They were far from home. Letters were rare. Some never saw their families again. Homesickness mixed with fear before every battle. The night before fighting was often silent. Men sat quietly, checking their armor, whispering prayers to the gods. The Roman soldier believed in many gods. Before bodiless sacrifices were made, animals were killed, and priests examined their organs. If the signs were good, the army felt confident. If the signs were bad, fear spread like fire. Superstition lived strongly in the camp. Battle formations required perfect timing. The famous testudo, or tortuse, formation protected soldiers from arrows. Shields locked together above and on the sides. It worked only if every man held steady. One weak arm could break the defense. Imagine standing in that formation. You hear arrows hitting shields like rain. You smell sweat and fear. Your arm shakes from holding the shield high. You cannot see the enemy clearly. You trust your brothers. If one drops his shield, the arrows will find flesh. The Roman army was powerful not because each man was the strongest, but because each man followed orders without question. Obedience was everything. Even in retreat, discipline had to remain. Panic was the true enemy. The centurions were often the bravest in battle. They stood in the front lines. Their armor was decorated so soldiers could see them clearly. This made them targets for the enemy, but it also showed courage. A good centurion earned respect. A cruel one earned fear. Often, he was both respected and feared. Time changed the young recruit. After months of training and marching, his body grew stronger. His feet became hard. His shoulders widened, but inside, something else changed too. He became used to violence. He became silent about pain. He learned not to show weakness. Some soldiers formed deep friendships. These bonds were stronger than many family ties. When one man fell in battle, the others felt it deeply. They buried their dead with simple rituals. Sometimes a small marker was placed with a soldier's name. Victory brought glory. The army could march through Rome in a triumph. Crowds cheered, but most soldiers never saw such glory. They fought in distant lands where no one cheered their names. The life of marching never truly ended. Even during peace, soldiers built roads, bridges, and forts. The Roman Empire expanded because its army moved constantly. Roads built by soldiers still exist today in parts of Europe. As months turned into years, the Legion became the soldier's world. The camp was his city. The Legion was his family. Rome was an idea he defended more than a place he saw, but the brutal reality remained. Behind the glory of Rome stood tired men with sore feet, scarred hands, and heavy hearts. They marched because they had to. They fought because they were ordered, and in their silence, they carried the weight of an empire. And this was only part of the story, because when real war began, when enemy swords clashed with Roman shields, when screams filled the air and blood soaked the ground, the true test of a legionary started. Battlefield chaos, shield wall, first blood, fear, and courage. Enemy charge, sound of war, wounds and pain, fallen comrades. Roman strategy, survival instinct, killing at close range, exhaustion, victory, and loss. Now continuing the script in smooth flow, without headings, keeping the flow natural and easy to understand. When the Roman legion finally faced the enemy in open battle, everything changed. Training was clean and organized. Real war was not. The battlefield was loud, confusing, and full of fear. The ground shook under thousands of feet. Dust rose into the air. Men could barely see clearly, but they could hear everything. The sound came first. Horns blowing orders, officers shouting commands, shields banging together. Then the enemy's war cries answered from the other side. That sound alone could freeze a man's blood. Even experienced soldiers felt their hearts beat faster. The Roman soldier stood in formation. His shield touched the shield of the man next to him. This wall of shields was his protection. Alone, he was vulnerable. Together, they were strong. He gripped his gladius tightly. His mouth was dry. Sweat ran down his face under his helmet. Before close fighting began, Roman soldiers often threw their pila, heavy throwing spears. These were not simple spears. The metal part was designed to bend when it hit a shield. If it struck an enemy shield, the long metal shank bent downward. This made the shield heavy and useless. The enemy was forced to drop it. After throwing the pila, there was no time to think. The enemy charged. The first clash was terrifying. Shields slammed into each other. Men pushed forward with all their strength. It was not just sword fighting. It was pushing, shouting, struggling for balance. If a soldier fell, he was in deadly danger. Trampled by feet or stabbed before he could rise. The Roman soldier did not swing his sword wildly. He stabbed forward in short, sharp movements. The gladius was perfect for close combat. It did not need wide space. A quick stab to the stomach, neck, or thigh could end a life. Blood appeared quickly. At first, it shocked the young soldier. The smell of iron filled the air. Screams rose around him. Some were from the enemy. Some were from his own side. But there was no time to look at faces. The shield had to stay up. The formation had to remain tight. Roman strategy was built on discipline. When the first line grew tired, fresh soldiers from the back moved forward to replace them. This rotation kept the line strong. The enemy often fought until exhausted. The Romans fought in waves. Still, no plan removed the fear completely. Arrows sometimes fell from the sky. If a gap opened in the shield wall, a spear could slip through. A man standing strong 1 second could fall the next. Imagine standing there. You feel a body fall against you. It is your friend. He does not move, but you cannot stop to help. The enemy is still pushing. Your arm aches from holding the shield. Your lungs burn from shouting and breathing dust. The Roman soldier survived by focusing on small actions. Step forward. Hold shield. Stab. Stab again. Listen for orders. Do not break formation. Breaking formation meant death. Cavalry charges were another terror. When enemy horsemen rushed forward, the ground thundered. But Roman soldiers trained for this too. They tightened their lines. Sometimes they formed square formations, shields facing outward. Horses often refused to crash into a solid wall of shields and spears. But not every enemy fought the same way. Some used guerrilla tactics. They attacked suddenly from forests or hills. In suit fights, the Roman soldier felt less secure. He depended heavily on his unit. Alone in unknown land, he was vulnerable. Battles could last for hours. The sun climbed higher. Armor grew hot and heavy. Thirst became painful. Yet stopping was not possible. The enemy did not wait for rest. Sometimes the line broke. When panic spread, men ran. That moment was the most dangerous. A retreating soldier turned his back to the enemy, and the enemy showed no mercy. The Romans feared shame almost as much as death. To lose a battle meant more than physical defeat. It meant dishonor. Standards, the sacred eagle symbols of the legion, had to be protected at all costs. Losing the eagle was a disaster. Soldiers would die before letting it fall into enemy hands. In the middle of chaos, centurions shouted clear commands. Their voices cut through noise. They struck with their vine sticks to push men back into position if needed. Leadership mattered deeply. A strong centurion could hold the line. A weak one could cause collapse. Wounds were common. A cut on the arm, a deep stab in the leg. Some soldiers kept fighting even while bleeding. Adrenaline hid pain for a short time. But once battle ended, reality returned. Field medics worked quickly. They used simple tools to remove arrows and clean wounds. Infection was the true enemy afterward. The battlefield after fighting was a terrible sight. Bodies covered the ground. Broken shields lay scattered. The earth was dark with blood. Survivors walked carefully, searching for friends among the fallen. Victory brought relief, a deep regret, a silent thanks to the gods. But even victory carried sadness. Every soldier knew someone who did not stand up again. Defeat was worse. Surviving a lost battle could feel like shame, heavier than armor. Punishment might follow. Harsh discipline kept fear alive, even after the enemy was gone. Yet something strange happened after many battles. Fear changed shape. It did not disappear, but it became familiar. The soldier learned how to move with it. He understood that thinking too much meant freezing. Acting quickly meant living. Years of war hardened him. His face showed scars. His eyes lost some of their innocence. He no longer reacted strongly to the sight of blood. Survival required emotional armor as much as physical armor. Still, deep inside, many soldiers carried memories. The first man they killed. The first friend they buried. The first battle they barely survived. These memories did not vanish easily. Roman expansion depended on these men. Each province added to the empire was built on their sweat and blood. Roads, cities, and forts followed their victories. But the cost was hidden in distant fields where ordinary soldiers fought and died. Some battles became famous in history. Others were forgotten. But for the men who stood there, every fight felt important. Every fight felt like the end. As the sun set after battle, camp had to be built again. Even in enemy territory, even after exhaustion, trenches were dug. Walls were raised. Guards were posted. War did not pause for grief. Night in camp after battle was quieter. Some men cleaned their swords slowly. Others stared at the ground. A few spoke softly about home. Laughter was rare on such nights, but the legion always moved forward. Orders came. Another march, another campaign, another enemy. The brutal reality of marching in a Roman legion was not just the weight of armor or the distance walked. It was this cycle. March. Build. Fight. Bury. Repeat. And yet, through all of this, Rome grew stronger. The empire expanded across continents. The soldier became both builder and destroyer. In the next part, we will explore what happened when campaigns lasted 4 years, when soldiers stayed far from home for decades, and how long service changed not only their bodies, but also their minds and their place in society.